One such example of logistic regression is one such example of a classification model. It's widely used in different domains such as finance, healthcare, banking, etc. Okay, what are the particular applications where logistic regression is useful? So a bank or a finance company wants to know if a particular customer is going to default or not. Okay, we want to see which patient is possibly diabetic based on several parameters such as um, sugar level, blood pressure, etc. We want to know if our email is spam or not. Okay, so we can even extend this problem and try to categorize the email into promotional, personal, official. All these are examples of supervised classification. Okay. And logistic regression is one such technique that is widely used in classification tasks. We have plans to include more techniques in our discussion, either today or possibly in the next session, after 2 days. Okay. So in this session, the goal of this session is to cover univariate logistic regression. And within this session, we will be trying to discuss binary classification, sigmoid function, likelihood function, how to build a regression model in R software, and odds and log odds. Okay. So I have already covered this slide. Now it makes sense to show that right now we are in the classification stage, and in the previous session we discussed the prediction problem using regression. Okay, so right now we are trying to look into building a model that does the classification. More specifically, we will look at binary classification case, but always possible to extend the problem to multinomial case. Okay, now let's compare our previous discussion. Let's use it as a starting point and then move on to the current discussion. What did regression give us? Regression output was a numeric variable. Okay, whereas now logistic regression will give us a categorical variable. Okay, in linear regression, what did we see? We wanted or we attempt to explain the relationship between two variables, out of which one is a independent or the explanatory variable, other is a dependent or a response variable, and we try to do this by building a relationship using a straight line. Okay. On the other hand, logistic regression is used to predict the value of the dependent variable in future using either a binary classification or a multinomial classification, or binary case or a multinomial case. Okay. So let's try to understand the whole concept of logistic regression through an example. Okay, I hope this example will make the concept more clear. Okay, so let's say there is a application, or there is a specific study. Okay, and in that we want to predict whether a patient is diabetic or not. Okay, so I have data like blood sugar level, cholesterol, cardiac, etc. And we would use one such observation, that is our blood sugar level, to find out whether a patient is diabetic or not. And this particular case will be used throughout our current discussion to explain the concept of logistic regression. Okay, so this is my tabular data, diabetes data. I have various observations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 values of blood sugar level and the corresponding outcome, whether the patient has diabetes, suffering from diabetes or not. Okay, so the answer is either no or yes. So typically we are trying to solve a binary classification. Okay, now first thing what we do is let's convert our outcome of no and yes in the form of 0 and 1. Okay. No will be shown as used or depicted as 0, and yes will be depicted as 1. For each blood sugar level, I have a corresponding outcome in the form of 0 and 1. Okay. Okay, now let's start. So I'm now plotting our data using a scatter plot. I have blood sugar level on the x-axis, diabetes on the y-axis. So the diabetic outcome is either 0 or 1, whether the person has diabetes or not, corresponding to each value of the blood sugar level as shown here on the x-axis. Okay, so outcome is 0 or 1. Now I want to separate the patients, uh, separate the patients with diabetes, without diabetes, into two different categories: with diabetes and without diabetes. Okay. What is the easiest way? Easiest way is I draw a line and say that this is my threshold. Points on the left of this line should be non-diabetic. Points on the right of the line should be diabetic. Okay. I try to draw a straight line. Now this line, I will call it decision boundary. And from the data what I have, looks like that the value of decision boundary is 210. Okay, is 210. So I have a straight line separating the two different classes, diabetic and non-diabetic. What happens now? It is a value of a of blood sugar level for someone which is more than 210, and the person is actually non-diabetic. Because of some reason, the blood sugar level was high on that particular sample, but the person is non-diabetic. On the other hand, there was a person with diabetes, but on that particular sample, in that particular sample, the blood sugar was lesser than 210. So we see that when we try to use a straight line to separate the two classes, there are two cases of misclassification. Right. Now let's say we want to reduce this misclassification. So I draw another straight line. Okay, at as the cutoff value, and this cutoff value is at 200, right? 200. So now this particular point I have been able to bring it bring it within the process. uh, Now this is no more a error, but the value 210 is still a error. It's still a misclassification, right? So now clearly indicates that deciding the class boundary based on such cutoff is actually risky, right? You will have misclassification, right? So what should we do? So one way to overcome this problem is that the glucose, instead of using the class level as 0 and 1 along with the glucose level, okay, let's not make it perfectly binary 0 and 1, but let's assign probability value of diabetes to each patient. Then based on the probability we will decide whether the person is diabetic or not. Let's not make them 1 and 0, diabetic and non-diabetic. Let's assign some probability to them based on their blood sugar level. Okay, so obviously the points at the bottom have low probabilities. Okay, points at the bottom with lower blood sugar level have low probabilities. Points in the middle have medium probabilities of having diabetes, and points on the top right with high blood sugar level have high probabilities of having diabetes. Right? Yeah. Hope this makes sense till now. Okay. Now we can actually try to model this distribution to a sigmoid curve. Sigmoid curve is also popularly known as S-shaped curve. Okay, S-shaped curve. So this curve, the probability on the sigmoid curve is expressed as probability of diabetes is equal to 1 over e to the power minus beta 0 plus beta 1 x. Okay, now this sigmoid curve has the properties that we want the line to have represent this data distribution. What are the properties? The properties are extremely low values in the start, extremely high values in the end, okay, and intermediate values in the middle. Intermediate values in the middle for for modeling the probability of diabetes of the different patients. Instead of having a straight line like this, we are now trying to use a sigmoid curve. Okay, and this curve seems to have the properties that we require for this kind of data distribution. Extremely low values at the beginning, uh, high values at the end, and intermediate values in the middle. Okay, so now uh, this is our sigmoid curve with different values of probability of having diabetes for each patient having different blood sugar levels. Assume that this particular curve, the value of beta 0 is minus 15 and value of beta 1 is 0.065. Okay, so again, it meets our criteria of lower values, higher values, and intermediate values in the center, right? Now, the question again boils down to what we had seen in linear regression. What are the best values of beta 0 and beta 1 for these points shown here? What are the best values of beta 0 and beta 1 for the points shown here? Okay. Why can't we simply fit a straight line like this? Okay, why can't we do this? Because straight line is not enough. Okay, values rise very uniformly here. We want something like this as shown in the sigmoid curve, right? Now the question is, how do we find the best fit sigmoid curve? Okay, so now what we can do, as we had seen in regression we try to minimize the total sum of square, SST, right? Now, what cost function should we minimize or maximize here in this particular case? Okay, now intuitively, what do we want? We want the people who do not have diabetes to have very small probability of having diabetes. We want the people who do not have diabetes to have very small probability of having diabetes. Okay, or as small as possible, probabilities as small as possible for those patients. Okay, since the person is non-diabetic. Okay, so what we want is if the probabilities are shown on y-axis and P1, P2, P3, P4, P6 are the probabilities of the patients who are non-diabetic, we want this probability of having diabetes to be as small as possible. We want them to be as small as possible, right? Shown here in these lines. Okay, so now remember this particular slide in the previous discussion. We have SST, SSR, SSE. We were trying to minimize SSE to get the best fit line, right? Remember this particular discussion. We had intercept slope and we were trying to minimize SSE to release square. Okay, so going back to the same example. Okay, we want to minimize P1, P2, P3, P4, and P6. We want to minimize P1, P2, P3, P4, P6, and we want to minimize P1, P2, P3, P3, P4, and P6. These are the people who are non-diabetic. So we want to minimize the probability of these people having diabetes. Okay, if we want to minimize this, we can actually maximize 1 minus P1, 1 minus P2, 1 minus P3, 1 minus P4, and 1 minus P6. Right. So we are trying to maximize these value, not this value. This we want to minimize. Alternatively, we would like to maximize this. Okay. Alternatively, we would like to maximize this. So, along with that, we would like to maximize the value of the probability of the people who are diabetic. If they have high blood sugar level, they will have higher probability of having diabetes. Right. So one expression that will maximize all these numbers is max of the product of all these diabetes. Is that is product will be equal to 1 minus P1 into 1 minus P2 into 1 minus P3 into 1 minus P4 into 1 minus P6 into P5 into P7 into P8 into P9 into P10. Okay, this is the cost function that we want to maximize. This is the cost function that we want to maximize. Okay, so the best fitting combination of beta 0 and beta 1 will be the one that will maximize this particular product of 1 minus P1 into 1 minus P2 into 1 minus P3 and so on. Okay, this product is called the likelihood function. This product is called the likelihood function. So this process where we are able to vary beta 0 and beta 1 until we find the best fit curve for the distribution of probability of having diabetes is called logistic regression. Okay, I hope now you are able to make out similarities and differences in linear and logistic regression. The process where we change or vary the betas. Okay, P5 and P6 are confusing, so let's go back to the slide here. See, okay, yeah. See, P5, P5 has P5 is this point. Okay, P5 has actually higher value. Okay, let me go to the table. Okay, P5 has actually higher value of blood sugar level, but is non-diabetic. Okay, let me show you in the table. See here, non-diabetic. If, um, uh, and the other one has lower value of diabetes, lower value of blood sugar level, but is diabetic. Okay, so this is my P5 and this is my P6 here. So this is my P5 and this is my P6. Okay, okay, okay. So we were here, right? So we are now going to find out the best value of beta 0 and beta 1 so that we are able to find the best fit curve for this distribution of probabilities. Okay, so you can see here in this picture also, um, P5 is here, which has a higher blood sugar level but non-diabetic, and P6 here which has lower blood sugar level but has been detected as um, uh, um, diabetic. Okay, right. So therefore, 1 minus 6 here, minus P6 here, and P5 here. Okay. So now the goal is to pick up values of beta 0 and beta 1. Okay, so let's say pick one particular value. This particular value will be beta 0 is minus 10, beta 1 is 0.03. Okay. So sigmoid curve will look something like this. Okay. Sigmoid curve will look something like this, and if we represent each probability value, it is shown here. It is shown here with the numbers here, 1 minus 0, 1 minus 0, and so on. Okay, so this is what we want to maximize for the people having low level of blood sugar. Probability should be minimum. So we should maximize 1 minus that probability. So what will be the likelihood of this? Likelihood will be of this will be the probabilities of all the patients having diabetic and non-diabetic, which is equal to the product of all this, which is 1.75 into 10 to the power minus 5, which is a very small value. Let's pick up another value of beta 0 and beta 1. Beta 1, we change it from 0.03 to 0.06. Okay, so this is your new sigmoid curve. Okay, and 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 likelihood value for this turns out to be the product of all the probabilities, which is 0.003. Okay, see the difference. We in the first case was 1.75 into 10 to the power minus 5. In the second case, it's 0.003. What is the change here? The change here is only in the value of beta 1, which is 0.03 to 0.06. We got the likelihood value. Okay, so we changed the value of beta 0 and beta 1, and we seek to have the best values of beta 0 and beta 1. That will give you the sigmoid curve representing our data distribution. The best fit curve would be the one that will correspond to the maximum value of this probability. Maximum. See, we want to maximize the function. We want to maximize the product. So we will select the values of beta 0 and beta 1 in such a way that this value is maximum. Okay. So this is a R implementation. It was done in R, and we could get the value of beta 0 and beta 1. But how did R arrive at the best value of beta 0 and beta 1? Okay, R actually tried various combinations of beta 0 and beta 1 internally, and the best value, any combination of beta 0 as minus 13.52 and beta 1 as 0.063 is one that maximizes this product. Okay, so the final equation, according to the R statistical software, you may be already using R for statistical applications. R is a very popular statistical software, open and source and free software that people use in a lot of applications, including statistics, machine learning, data science, etc. So um, R was used here to build the logistic model. Okay, so now based on this value of beta 0 and beta 1, probability of diabetes is 1 to the power e to the power 1 over 1 plus e to the power minus beta 0 plus beta 1x, where the value of beta 0 is 13.52 and beta 1 is 0.063. And what is x? X is my blood sugar level. Okay, so I can rewrite the expression like this. Probability of diabetes is equal to 1 over 1 plus e to the power minus 13.52 plus 0.063 into blood sugar level. Okay. Now, what is the likelihood function with this combination of beta 0 and beta 1? If you compute the likelihood, it turns out to be 0.594. Okay. And 0.594, if you see, it is much larger than this value and this value. Okay, and we were actually in fact trying to do this. Okay, detailed explanation of this is given on this particular website at Logistic Regression by G.R. Lee, Department of Statistics, the Pennsylvania State University. Page 10 to 26 deals with all these examples and show how it can be worked. Okay, even I have written the web link here, national.psu.edu JOL2 course STAT 597E notes to logic.pdf. Page 10 to 26 gives detail about this. Okay. So now we got a value of beta 0 and beta 1, which maximizes the likelihood value. Okay. Now we will talk about another topic called odds and log odds. We saw that probability of diabetes is equal to 1 over 1 plus e to the power minus beta 0 plus beta 1 x. Okay, what does this expression tells us? This expression indicates the relationship between probability of diabetes, and X, which is our blood sugar level. Okay, but at one instance, what do you intuitively feel with this expression? It's a bit confusing, right? It's a bit confusing. Um, it's not very intuitive. The expression is not very intuitive. It is actually difficult to make out or understand what is the trend. What is the trend that exists between probability of having diabetes and blood sugar level? What is the trend? Okay, so my question is that if I increase the blood sugar level by a regular fixed interval of let's say 11.5, okay, how will this increase or how will this affect the probability? Okay, how will that affect probability? It's not very clear, right? It's very confusing. If I include the blood sugar level of say 11.5 by on a regular interval, will the probability of diabetes increase by same regular interval? If not, what will happen? It's not very intuitive from this expression. Can we think of linear form of this equation? Can we think of a linear form of this equation? Okay, so let's see now. Probability of probability is given by 1 over 1 plus e to the power minus beta 0 plus beta 1x. Therefore, 1 minus p can be expressed by this particular fraction. Okay, and probability of p over 1 minus p, p over 1 minus p will be equal to e to the power beta 0 plus beta 1x. This is straightforward. You can compute yourself. And if you take ln of that, ln of p over 1 minus p will be equal to beta 0 plus beta 1x, where beta 0 is 13 minus 13.5, beta 1 equal to 0.06. Okay, now how do we interpret this p over 1 minus p? P is probability of having diabetes, 1 minus p is probability of having no diabetes. Okay, so ln, let's call this p over 1 minus p as odds. Let's call this p over 1 minus p as odds. So ln of p over 1 minus p, you can say log odds. Ln of p over 1 minus p will be equal to log odds. Okay, so p over 1 minus p is 4. What does it mean? It means that probability of having diabetes is 4 times the probability of having no diabetes, or probability of having diabetes is 0.8, 80%. If probability of having no diabetes is 20%. Right? So we are essentially trying to understand what is this p over 1 minus p and trying to express it by the term odds. By the term odds, if we take log of that, it becomes log of odds. Essentially, it tries to establish a relationship between probability of having diabetes and probability of having no diabetes. Okay, so now if p 0.5, 1 minus p will be 0.5 and p over 1 minus p is 1. Right. Odds is equal to 2. We can compute, if odds is 2, we can compute the value of p, and the value of p will be 0.67. So what do we see? We can keep going back and forth between odds and p. Okay, between odds and p, between odds and p. Now instead of probability, we have two new terms, odds and log odds. Instead of probability, we have two new terms, odds and log odds. Okay. Now, what is the relationship between odds and probability? We have moved from probability and introduced the term odds and log odds. But what is the relationship between odds and probability? So I have a question to all of you. If we increase P, what will be the effect on odds? You can type your answer or you can mute yourself. If we increase P, what will be the effect on odds? Vishali says increase. Anyone else? Do you want me to go back to the previous slide? You have relationship between P and odds, right? and odds. So I'm saying if P increases, how will it include? How will it impact odds? Type your answers. My question is, if we increase P, what will be the effect on odds? Increase P, what will be the effect on odds? Savannah says increases. Right, is right. So it should increase. You should check this out. Probability is 0, odd is 0. Probability is 0.25, odd is 0.3. Probability is 0.4, odd is 0.67. And probability is 0.5, odd is 1. Probability is 0.6, odd is 1.5. Probability is 0.75, odd is 3. Probability is 1, odd is infinity. It actually increases. Okay. Now see this table. For a particular value of beta 0 and beta 1, I have blood sugar level, corresponding probabilities, corresponding odds, corresponding log odds. Let's plot probability and log odds. Sorry, let's plot blood sugar level, log odds. Blood sugar level, log odds. Blood sugar level is here, log odds is here. What is the trend? Increasing trend. Blood sugar level increases, log odds increases. Linear trend. Right. So how does change in blood sugar level affects odds? Let's see this. If I increase the blood sugar level by a constant of 11.5 every time, 20 to 20 to 231.5 to 243 to 2 so on, the odds increases by a factor of 2 from 0.74 to 1.8, 1.8 to 2.96 and so on. Okay. So if it changes linearly, if blood sugar level changes linearly by a factor of 11.5, by adding 11.5, has a multiplicative effect on odds. That is the magnitude 2 times. Okay. So this relationship between blood sugar level and log odds is intuitive compared to blood sugar level and probability. That is, the relationship between X and odds or log odds is more intuitive compared to the previous case. And it makes sense to discuss the logistic regression results in terms of log odds and odds and probability. Okay, same concept can be extended to multivariate logistic regression. So now you will have beta 0, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, and so on. There was one example, Ecom example. There were 21 predictor variable or independent variables such as so imagine there is a telecom company like Airtel, like Airtel or some company, and and there are different independent variables like monthly charges, paperless billing, and so on. Okay, so we have to build a logistic regression model. Okay, for the customers who will churn out or not churn out. So the way to solve this problem is first you have to fill up the missing values, that is called missing value imputation. Scales of the missing value imputation um, is is um, uh, is given here. Markov chain Monte Carlo by Oxford University Statistics and expectation maximization on SAS support. Okay, so if you just type this in Google, you will come to know how to fix up missing value imputation, outlier treatment, analyzing scales of continuous variables, and then dummy variable creation for categorical variables. For example, yes, no, true, false, and so on. Okay. So I have not shown here the building of logistic regression model. In R, we have done using generalized linear models. GLM is the function. And then again, similarly like in linear regression, we use AIC, Akachi information criteria, VIF and p-value to eliminate insignificant variable. Final model has all the significant variables where VIF for any variable is not very high. Okay. So we will come back to the logistic regression once more a few minutes after we have completed the discussion on accuracy and error measure. Okay. So for a binary classification, you have generally two outcomes, two outcomes, and can be shown by two contingency tables. Okay. So one is the actual value, yes and no. One is the predicted value from your model, yes and no. Okay. With this combination of actual and predicted, a 2 by 2 contingency table can be derived. What are the outcomes of the contingency table? If the actual is yes, predicted is yes, the outcome is true positive. If the actual is yes, predicted is no, from the model it comes no, it's called false negative. If the actual is no, predicted is yes, it's called false positive. And if the actual is no, predicted is no, it's called true negative. So the diagonal elements, two positive and two negative, are the strictly classified data points. Okay. So if a model, say for example, has 23 false negative, 23 false negative. Okay.
ಶಿಕಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್ ಲಾಗಿನ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರು ಸರ್, ಅವ್ರು ಲಾಗೌಟ್ ಆಗೋಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು.
If a model has 23 false negative, it means
ಮಳೆ
that
ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಇದಿದೆ.
ಅದು ಸ್ಮಾರ್ಟ್ ಮರಿ.
means that model has predicted 23 positives incorrectly as negative. Incorrectly as negative. Okay. From this contingency table, we can derive sensitivity. We can derive sensitivity of the model and specificity of the model. So sensitivity means proportion of yes correctly predicted, that is number of actual yes correctly predicted by total number of actual yes. And specificity means number of no's correctly predicted, which is equal to number of actual no's correctly predicted by the number of actual no's. Okay. So summarize from the contingency table, sensitivity is equal to 2 positive divided by 2 positive as false negative, as shown here. Specificity is equal, which also means 2 negative rate, is 2 negative divided by 2 negative plus false positive. Okay. We can also compute 2 positive rate, false positive rate, false negative rate from this. And overall accuracy is given by the summation of 2 positive plus 2 negative divided by sum of all 4, positive plus false positive plus 2 negative plus false negative. Which is shown. Okay. Same concept can also be extended for multi-class problem. I will show you in the next slide. Other errors like absolute error, squared error, also popular. People also sometimes compute mean absolute error, mean squared error, root mean square error. Okay. Root mean square error and root relative square error are also very popular. Okay. The mean squared error is sometimes affected by the presence of outliers. Okay. In the classification system, these two ways of computing the accuracy is very popular: holdout method and cross validation. In the holdout method, we divide the whole data into two-third and one-third. Two-third of the data will be used for model construction and one-third of the data will be used for accuracy estimation. Okay, and then we reshuffle the data and repeat this k times. Average of all the k times, k execution, is the accuracy of the model. In cross validation, we divide the data into k parts. For example, k equal to 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, 10 is generally widely accepted. So here we divide the data into k mutually exclusive subsets as shown here, 1 to 10. Okay, approximately of equal size. So in the first iteration, okay, 1 to 9 will be used for any Okay, and the last one is will be used for testing. In the second iteration, 2 to 10 will be used for training, and first will be used for testing. In the third iteration, 3 to 10 and 11, 3 to 10 and 1 will be used for training, and second will be used for testing. We will keep doing this for 10 times. So what is the idea? Idea is that every data points gets to be a part of training data as well as the test data. Different iterations. Different iterations. Okay, this is called k-fold cross validation. Okay. Many of you may be aware of ROC curve. Okay, ROC stands for receiver operating characteristic curve, where the x-axis is false positive rate, y-axis is true positive rate, and essentially the area under the ROC curve is a measure of the accuracy of the model. The closer the curve, the diagonal line, less accurate is the model. Okay, and if the your curve is towards the upper side, something like this, towards the upper side, the accuracy of the model is better. The accuracy of the model is better. Perfect model will have an area under the curve as 1. Okay. Now, one more slide on precision recall and F measure. Precision recall are very popular to report accuracies. So precision actually means exactness. Exactness. What percentage of tuples? Tuples means your observations in the table. Okay. What percentage of tuples that the classifier labeled as positive are actually positive? Actually positive. Okay. Or precision means the fraction of relevant instances among the retrieved instances. Precision is given by true positive divided by true positive plus false positive. What fraction of tuples that the classifier labeled as positive are actually positive? Recall, which is also called sensitivity, means completeness. To see the difference, precision means exactness, recall means completeness. What percentage of tuples, what percentage of positive tuples did the classifier labeled as positive, or fraction of the total amount of relevant instances that we actually retrieved? So recall is given by true positive divided by true positive plus false negative. So here is false positive, it's false negative. That score is 1. Okay, let's an example to find out the difference between precision and recall. Okay, we are doing some search in Google. Okay, using Google search engine, which returns 30 pages. Okay, and only 20 of which were relevant. Okay, we gave some keyword search. Okay, such as Atal FTP program, which returned 30 pages of links to us, out of which 20 were relevant. Okay, while the search engine failed to show another 40 additional relevant pages to us. Okay, so what is the observation? Observation is that the search engine gave us 30 pages, out of which 20 is useful to us, and the search engine failed to return 40 additional pages, which were also relevant to us. So the precision of the search engine is 20 out of 30, because only 20 were relevant to us out of 30 pages. Precision is 20 by 30. Okay, precision also means exactness. While recall is 20 over 60. 20 pages over 60. 20 retrieved 20 correct pages, while missed 40 other relevant pages. The total is 20 plus 40, 60. So out of 60, only 20 it could retrieve. Recall is 20 by 60, which is 1/3. Precision is how useful the search results are. Precision means how useful. 20 out of 60, one third were useful. And recall is how complete the search results are. So in terms of completeness, the value is by 3 by 30. Complete results are 20 out of 30 were complete. Okay, so precision means how useful the search results are, and completeness, recall means how complete the results are. People sometimes also use F score, which is the harmonic mean of precision and recall. Okay, which is equal to 2 into precision into recall plus. Okay. For a multi-class problem, we will extend the number of classes from A and B, and we will not include C, D, E, F in both rows and column. And will compute producer's accuracy, user's accuracy for a multi-class problem, and also overall accuracy, which is the sum of the diagonal elements. We had also seen in a two-class problem. I total number of row total and column total observations. As such, here the accuracy is 84%. Will also compute omission error, which is 100 minus producer's accuracy, and commission error, which is 100 minus commission's accuracy, which can be directly computed from this contingency table. Here, the producer's accuracy and user's accuracy have been computed, from which we can also compute commission error, commission error and omission error. By statistics, also known as K hat, is also computed for some classification systems. Okay, let's come back to our discussion on logistic regression. We will now introduce a term called cutoff. Because we have been discussing probability of having diabetes. Okay, we need to also put a cutoff to that probability, and then say that people who have probability below the cutoff have lower, are non-diabetic. People who are above are maybe diabetic. The question is, how does the value of cutoff affect sensitivity and specificity and accuracy of the model? In general, there is a point. We increase the sensitivity, if we increase the specificity, if the sensitivity is decreased, the accuracy, all three meet the point. Okay, so ideally this is the cutoff where one should select, because beyond that sensitivity will decrease, accuracy will flatten down. Okay, so now when the cutoff model is increased beyond this, sensitivity, as you can see, will come down and specificity will go up. Why does this happen? Let's see. The diabetic example, what we have seen, let's put cutoff 0.05 and 0.95. So at 0.05, I have put a green line here. 0.95, I have put a green line here. Okay, all points after the green line are diabetic. All points before the green line are non-diabetic. These are non-diabetic. Okay. Let's pick up the cutoff as 0.05. If I put the cutoff of as 0.05, even if a patient has minimal chance of being diabetic, patient will be predicted as diabetic because the cutoff is so low. Okay, so what it means? It means that all the diabetic patients have been correctly identified as diabetic. That means on the right side. Therefore, the sensitivity of the model is very good. However, patient is predicted as non-diabetic only if its corresponding probability is very low, lower than 0.05. Okay, now because of this, the non-diabetic patients have not been identified with the same accuracy as a diabetic patient. Therefore, specificity of the model is not high. It's very sensitive, but the model is very sensitive in identifying the diabetic patients, but specificity of the model is not high because the non-diabetic patients have not been identified with the same accuracy as the diabetic patients. Let's consider another case of as 0.95. Now, in this case, unless a patient has very high chance of being diabetic, patient will be treated as non-diabetic. Okay, so it means that all the non-diabetic patients this side, okay, have been correctly identified as non-diabetic. That is the specificity of the model is pretty high. However, a patient will be predicted as diabetic only if the corresponding probability is very high, more than 0.95. Because of this, because of the discussion what we had, uh, the diabetic patients, the diabetic patients have not been identified with the same accuracy as the non-diabetic. Therefore, sensitivity of the model is not high. So it is have to select the cutoff in such a way that is a balance between the sensitivity and specificity of the model, or else if one increases, the other will decrease. And if we choose a cutoff very low or very high, it will impact the sensitivity and specificity of the model. Okay, so so the best cutoff will depend on your data points. We need to plot this. We need to plot this cutoff and value. See for your data what is the point where all three meets. There is a random chosen cutoff of the probability of having diabetes or non-diabetes will produce a scenario where sensitivity will be high, specificity will be low, or specificity will be high, sensitivity will not be that high. Sensitivity will be low. Okay. So we'll stop the logistic regression here. Okay, and I have now with me. So we would like to go ahead and any doubts till this point? Okay, so I am going to stop sharing the slide now and move on to our next topic. Okay, next topic we are going
Sir,
to have.
excuse me, sir. One of
Yes, yes.
our friend is asking the question is what is the best cutoff then?
Yeah, I told that depending on the data, you have to plot the graph of accuracy of sensitivity versus specificity and find out the cutoff value. So yeah, I already answered. So for the diabetic data, I showed you the example, but for other data, you will have to plot it and find out the best cutoff value. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So let me begin with the next topic, or do you want a break again of few minutes? Is it?
If we want to take 2 to 3 minutes break, sir, because we are talking continuously.
Okay, I'll take a 2 minutes break and then
Okay, sir. Fine,
join
sir.
it. Yeah.
Fine, sir.
Okay, let's continue.
Yes, sir.
So now we will continue our discussion on classification, and I hope that we will be able to cover at least one topic now, given that we have close to 20-25 minutes. So initial idea was to cover these three topics: Bayesian classifier, classification by decision tree induction, random forest. Let us try to cover Bayesian classifier now, and if time permits, we will either start decision tree or take up in the next session. Okay. So many of you may have used Bayesian classifier. Has anyone used Bayesian classifier or read about it earlier anywhere in your experiments or in theory? Shavana, yes, you have. You are right. You have. You say that you have used it somewhere. Have you used it anywhere in any experiments? No. Anyone else who has used this classifier in any experiments? Okay, Shavana has learned it. How many of you have tried it on real-time data and have checked how good is performance of this classifier? Okay, Shavana has gone through the theory. So in case I get stuck, I will ask her to take me out. Thank you, Shavana. Okay. Bayesian classifier is actually a statistical classifier and performs probabilistic prediction. It performs probabilistic prediction. What it means that it predicts a it predicts a probability associated with a class for every data point. Or we also say that it predicts class membership probabilities. Okay. The, the premises behind Bayesian classifier is Bayes theorem. Okay, all of you may have gone through Bayes theorem in different avenues across the subjects or in machine learning or in mathematics somewhere, statistics or somewhere. So Bayes theorem is the foundation for Bayesian classifier. Okay, and it has been observed that this training example, if you add any training sample to the data, it can incrementally increase or decrease the probability of a data point falling into a class. So it's also possible that any other prior knowledge can be integrated with the observed data. Okay. So what does Bayesian classifier do? It will predict the probability of what? Probability that a data item is a member of a particular class. Probability that a data item is a member of a particular class. So I have class A, class B, C, D, E. I have a data point. Will tell me the probability of this data point falling into class A or class B or class C or class E or class E. And then based on the highest probability, you can assign this data point to either A or B or C or D or E. Okay. The simple Bayesian classifier is also known as the Naive Bayesian classifier. Naive Bayesian classifier is based on the independence assumption. I will come to this point. What is meant by independence assumption? Okay, and in general, Bayesian classifier seems to be doing very well. People have published papers comparing it with decision trees, neural networks, and so on. Okay, let's start by discussing the Bayes theorem. Okay, it's very easy to visualize this. We have a Venn diagram. Okay, so from the Venn diagram, we see that uh, this has been widely used to explain conditional probability. Okay, so probability of A given B. Yes, exactly. Bayesian classifier uh, has the foundation from conditional probability, right? So as I just stated, the Venn diagram has been used to explain conditional probability. So probability of A given B in conditional probability means that the probability of observing event A given that event B has already been observed. Okay, in conditional probability, probability of A given B means the probability of observing event A given that event B has already been observed, or how much of the time that we see B, we also see A. Okay, the probability of A given B can be written as probability of A intersection B. Look at the Venn diagram here and then try to visualize probability of A given B. This has been explained here just now, is equal to probability of A intersection B over probability of B. You can use the Venn diagram to visualize this. And probability of B given A equal to probability of A intersection B divided by probability of A. Okay, therefore I can little bit rearrange the terms here and say that probability of A given B is equal to probability of B given A. I can express probability of A given B in terms of probability of B given. And with a little bit of rearrangement, it is very easy to show that probability of A given B equal to probability of B given A into probability of A divided by probability of B. Okay, so what I have done here is express probability of A given B in terms of probability of B given A and individual probabilities of A and B. Okay, more formally, let X be a data. Okay, and let H be a hypothesis that data X belongs to class C. Let H be a hypothesis that data point X belongs to class C. So in classification problem, what do we need? We need to estimate or determine the probability that this hypothesis H holds given X. In classification, we wish to determine probability that hypothesis holds given X. That is, we want to estimate probability of H given X, probability of hypothesis given data point X, when observed data point X. This is known as the posterior probability of H condition on X. Conditional posterior probability of H condition on X. Okay, so here probability of H is the prior probability. How do we obtain probability of H? Prior probability. How do we obtain probability of H? Anyone? How do we obtain probability of H? Prior probability. Probability of H is obtained from ground truth or training data. Okay, so probability of H is the prior probability. Probability of X given H is the posterior probability of X condition on H. Okay, and I can also simplify and write this as posterior equal to likelihood into prior by evidence. This is my evidence, and this is probability of H is my prior probability obtained from training data. Okay, so now Bayes theorem says that um, Bayes theorem can be used classification as follows. Let X be a data sample for which class label is unknown. Okay. And then I define a hypothesis H, which says that X belongs to class C. What is the role of classification here? The role of classification here is to compute the posterior probability of hypothesis H given data sample X. Probability of a hypothesis H given data sample X. where PH is my prior probability, initial probability, which is obtained from the training data, and Px is the probability that the sample is observed, which is this generally remains constant. Okay, so Px given h, this term, Px given h, this term, which is also the posterior probability, that is the probability of observing sample given hypothesis holds, needs to be computed. So what we do in this classification, we try to predict whether it belongs to class Ci if and only if the probability of X belonging to class Ci is highest among all the possible classes, as I, J, K, and so on, all the K classes. Okay, so as we can make out, what we are doing, we are trying to compute probability of data point X belonging to class Ci, probability of data point X belonging to class Cj, probability of data point X belonging to class Ck. So we are computing so many probabilities, 1, 2, 3, and if you have more number of classes, you are computing so many probabilities, right? Shown here 1, 2, 3, and so on. So the entire um, procedure requires involving so many probabilities, and therefore this method has computational cost involving computation of all these probabilities. But it's not it's not a point to be appreciated too much, because now we have good computational power. But in comparison, if you are trying to compare Bayesian classification system with other classifiers, then this may be a factor which will decrease its execution time compared to other techniques. Okay. So now classification here is to derive the maximum posteriori, as I explained in the last slide. Let D be a training set of tuples, okay, and it has associated class level, okay, and each tuple is represented by n-dimensional attribute vector x1, x2, x3, x4, xn. Suppose there are n classes C1, C2, Cm. So as I told in the previous slide, classification is to derive the maximum posteriori, that is probability of Ci given point data point X, and I will range from class 1 to M for all the classes. Okay, and this can be done through Bayes theorem. Probability of Ci given X is equal to probability of X given Ci into PCI by Px. X is generally constant for all the classes. So what we need to estimate is only the numerator. Probability of X given Ci, probability of X given Ci into probability of Ci. And this has to be maximized for a class, for the ith class, which the data will belong. Okay, now this is the overall concept, how it works. Okay, it's probability of Ci can be obtained from the, I told a few slides back. Can anyone tell me how do we estimate probability of Ci from the, I gave this answer a few 2 slides back. Since denominator is constant, only the numerator has to be maximized. For this, how do we obtain probability of Ci for ith class? From dash data. What data? Even. How do we obtain probability of Ci? From dash data. I am giving you the clue, from dash data. Even you can type your answers. See, the denominator is actually the probability data data point is observed. Okay, or a class is observed. So this is equal, this is constant. So we don't have to worry about the denominator. So what we need to worry about is numerator. In the numerator, we have to we need to maximize the numerator only to see whether point x belongs to class I or j or k. For this we have to compute individual probabilities for each of the data point belonging to each of the classes. So the second term, this is the likelihood, this is the prior probability. So from where do we get this prior probability? We got few answers. Yes, Shabana is right. Training data. We just told that PCI, that is the probability of given class, can be obtained from the training data or ground truth. Both Shabana and Tabassum are right. Okay. It's not that difficult. This is the only concept in Bayesian classification, and if you see carefully, there is nothing great I have done. We have only utilized our knowledge of this conditional probability. That's it. I'm not introducing any single term. You know this conditional probability. You can very well express Drake theorem. You can use it for classification. So as I told, this is constant for all classes, and this can be obtained from the this is also called the prior probability obtained from the data. Okay. Right. Now let's look at the Naive Bayesian classification. Why it is called Naive? Yeah. Naive Bayesian classification assumes that the effect of an attribute value on a given class, the effect of an attribute value x1, x2, x3, x4, x5. These are my attribute values. Is y. Okay. So x1, x2, x3 are my attribute values. So Naive Bayesian classification assumes that the effect attribute value on a given class is independent of the values of other attributes. Means that the effect of x1 on y is independent of the effect of x2 on y. Is independent of the effect of x3 on y. Okay, y is my class level. C1, C2, C3. So Naive Bayesian classification assumes that the effect x1 on class C1 is independent of x2, x3, x4, x5, and so on. This is known as class conditional independence. Remember the case of a house example. I am assuming that the area of the flat is independent of the number of floors in that building, is independent of the distance of the building from city center, and so on. This assumption of independence is called class conditional independence. This makes the entire calculation very easy, very simple. Therefore, the term naive in Naive Bayesian classification. Each one has each x1, x2, x3 have some effect on one another, and it's difficult to use Bayes theorem as it is for classification. We assume that x1, x2, x3 all are independent of each other. Okay. So consider data points x1, x2, xn. Okay. This is the n-dimensional feature vector. Consider m classes C1, C2, Cm. What did we discuss now? We discussed that a data point x will belong to any class for which it has the greatest posterior probability. This part. This part. Sorry. Not this part. This part. We are computing posterior probability for. Let me raise this. So what I'm saying is this part. We compute this for every class. And for whichever class it is highest, that data point is assigned to that particular class. Okay, this is what I am trying to show here, the left hand side. This is the probability of x belonging to ith class, and as naive Bayesian classification, we compute it for ith class, jth class, and so on. And for whichever class probability is higher, data point is assigned to that class. Probability here in this expression, the data point x will be assigned to class Ci if probability of Ci given x is more than probability of Cj given x. For all j is such that j lies between 1 and m, where 1 to m are my classes and I is not equal to j. Yes, Savannah is right. Even the test data class. So depending on the highest probability, the data point will be assigned to a particular class. Okay. Now we have seen this equation many times earlier. Probability of C given Ci given x is equal to probability of x given Ci. Okay, into probability of Ci or probability of x. Now, if the class probabilities, that is P of Ci, are not known, okay, they can be assumed to be equal. So in that case, what we need to maximize is only probability of x given Ci. You look at this equation here, then we need to only maximize the likelihood. That's it. Okay, we only need to maximize the likelihood. Or if you have training samples, we can obtain PCI from the training sample. This is what I was emphasizing again and again. Okay, now can be a bit expensive to compute probability of x given Ci for all the data points for all the classes, and if you have data points with C values, imagine there will be C and possible values of x to consider. Okay, so we assume the naive class conditional independence. Okay, and this assumption we get the following expression: probability of x given Ci, this particular term, is equal to the summation of the joint probability, summation of the um, summation of the uh, summation of x given C. That is, x is my data point from I to k, and I is my class label I to m, 1 to m, where I represents a given class level. So this is done for each data point for all the classes and summed over. This is called the joint probability model. Okay, I hope you are getting what I'm saying. So x is my data point. This is my data point. Imagine the data to be an image. Okay, so every individual pixel in that image, every individual pixel in that image is a data point, and I need to compute the probability of every individual pixel belonging to every individual class, and sum all these probabilities is the joint probability model. Okay, this is the joint probability model. Not sum, and find the product over all the data points and all the classes. So probability of xk given Ci will be equal to x1 given Ci into x2 given Ci into x3 given Ci, and so on up to xn given Ci. And this product will give me probability of x given Ci, in which we are interested. The numerator part here, which is the joint probability model. Okay. Now, that is the only concept here. There is nothing more. And then you do it for all the pixels for all the classes, and then assign the pixels to the class for which it has the maximum probability. Okay. And x1 given Ci, xn given Ci can be estimated from the training sample. Okay. Let's see an example. So this is the example. Example consider. Okay, I have table with 5 columns. Uh, the header is not very clear, but I will explain this to you. Age, income, whether the so I have a table for a for few people, uh, considering their age, income, whether the person is student or not, how good is their credit rating, and whether they are going to buy a computer or not. So buying a computer, the last column actually the class label. Actually the class label. Class label is binary here, yes and no. Whether the person will buy a computer, whether the person will not buy a computer. So no is one class, yes is another class. As you can see, buys computer is equal to yes, C2 buys computer is equal to no. Okay. Now I have a new data. Now this is given to me. New sample comes. Sample is entered here. Last. Okay, at the last below this number here. Sample says age less than 30, income is medium, student yes, credit rating is fair. Now I have to predict whether the person with these characteristics will buy a computer or not, yes or no. I need to build a model from this table. Okay, so let's see how to solve this problem. It's very easy. Remember this. This is what we have been discussing for so long. So what do we need now? We know that this part is almost constant for all the observations, so no need to worry about this. Let's compute P of CI, which can be done from the training data. So probability of buys computer, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, let me count the total observations. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Total there are 14 observations, out of which 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are yes and 5 are no. Okay, so probability of CI is probability of CI, that is I is my eighth class. Eighth class is either yes or no. So for yes, probability is 9 by 14, which is 0.643. For no, the probability is 5 out of 14, which is 0.357. Okay, this is taken care. Now let's move on to this part. Probability of X given CI. I is my ith class, so we will do it for each class. Okay, so for remember that my problem statement says that age is less than 30. I don't have to worry about 31 to 40 more than 40. Okay, so probability of age less than 30 and label X is probability of age less than 30 and C is will buy a computer, yes or no. Age less than 30 buys computer equal to yes. Okay, we know that number of people who will buy computer is 9. So out of that, less than 30. So less than 30 is this one, but no, less than 30 is this one, this one, this one, this one, 5, 3, 4, 5. Out of 5, 2 are 1 and 2 are yes, and other 3 are no. Okay, so 2 out of 9. 9 are going to buy a computer, so 2 out of 9, which is 0.22, and 3 are not going to buy the computer. Okay, so 3 out of 5, which is 0.6. Next, let's change our X and move on to income. So income we have high, medium, low, three income, different groups. Okay, so income is equal to medium. Also in my problem statement, it has been written that for that particular person, income is medium. So I don't have to worry about high and low. Just focus on medium. They are all together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 medium. Okay. So income is equal to medium, buys computer is equal to yes. There are all together 4 such cases. income is medium, buys computer equal to yes, 1, then 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 4 out of 9, 0.444. Similarly, income is medium, buys computer equal to no, it's 2 out of 5. Okay, which is 0.4. Now next move on to the third we have taken into account x1, x2, not let us take into account x3. X3 is student, whether the person is student or not, yes or no. Okay, so if the person is student, whether whether the person will buy a computer, given that the person will buy a computer, what is the probability that the person is student? Is so the total number of buys computer is 9. Out of that, there are 6 cases where the person is student. So it will be 6 out of 9, which is 0.067. What is the probability that the person will not buy a computer, given that the person is a student? Okay, there are altogether 5 cases where people are not buying a computer. Out of that, there is one case when the person is a student but doesn't buy a computer. So probability is 0.2. Okay. Now the fourth independent variable, credit rating. Credit rating is fair, excellent. Only 2 types. In our problem statement, credit rating is fair. We will not worry about excellent. Credit rating is fair given that the person buys a computer. So 6 cases out of 9. Credit rating is fair given that person doesn't buy a computer. So doesn't buy a computer are 5 cases. So credit rating fair and doesn't buy a computer. So fair and no. Fair and no. Here, one case here. Okay, and fair and no. Fair and no. Only one. Fair and no. Okay, one second. Fair and no. Okay, one case here. So 2. So 2 out of 5 no's, which is 0.4. Okay. So what we have done, we have computed what we have done. See here, we have computed the likelihood. We have computed the likelihood of all the data points belonging to either class 1 or class 2, depending on the attribute values. Okay. Now this is my problem statement. I have copied my problem statement from here. Okay. This is a new data item. My classifier should classify whether this person X will buy a computer or not. Okay, so for this attributes are age less than 30, income medium, he is a student, credit rating is fair, whether this person will buy a computer or not, and I have computed all the probabilities from this table. Let's now work on this. The probability of X given Ci, that is this part, okay, equal to given Ci. So there are 2 i's here, 2 ith class, one is yes and one is no. Probability of whether the person will buy a computer is yes, equal to 0.22 from here, yes, into 0.444. Okay, and next is yes here into 0.667, and then next yes is here into 0.667 is 0.044. Why did I multiply all this? Because I had shown you earlier that Bayesian classifiers works on the joint probability model. You multiply the probabilities of data point, joint probability exactly. So you see, when I expand this term to get the evidence T. X1 given Ci into X2 given Ci into Xn given Ci. I have multiplied all these and got 0.044. Similarly, I do it for the second class no. I multiply, let me change this. I multiply 0.6, which is no, into 0.4, which is no, into 0.2, which is no, into 0.04, which is no. So I get 0.019. Okay. Now, let's worry only about the numerator part. numerator part, probability of X given Ci into probability of Ci. So which is probability of X given Bayes computer is equal to yes into probability of Bayes computer is equal to yes. So this Bayes computer equal to yes has been computed here. It is 0.0643. Okay, 0.0643 into 0.44 will give me 0.028. This into this, and because we are computing the numerator. Okay, now let's do it for no. For no, 0.019 into 0.357 here. This and this will give you 0.007. So for this particular data entry, the probability of buying computer is 0.028. The probability of not buying computer is 0.007. Obviously 0.028 is greater than 0.007. Therefore this person will buy a computer. The job the Bayesian classifier will do if you give this as a problem statement to the classifier which has built a model based on this table. Okay, now we have to do these computations manually just to explain you. But most of the softwares now have inbuilt functionalities to do this, and we'll be able to do it quickly in a lesser than a fraction of seconds. Very large data sets. This is a toy data set, but it could do for a very large data sets, and it can give you labels for all 1,000 or 100,000 of unseen samples, just like we have done it here. Okay. Okay. So there are some comments. Okay. It is easy to implement. Good. It gives you good results most of the time. But there are some disadvantages. For example, we assume class condition independence. Therefore, there is a loss of accuracy. Okay. Just hold on. Okay, this is one of the drawbacks, class condition independence. Therefore, there is a loss of accuracy, and typically there is dependencies among the variables. So there is dependencies between income and student and credit rating. Obviously, students will have lower income, they will have a lower credit rating. And students will the existence of students will also depend on the age group. Obviously, there is a dependency. Okay, so this classifier is not able to take into account this particular feature. Okay, so how to overcome this problem? We can overcome this problem by another technique called Bayesian belief networks. Bayesian belief network is capable of dealing with these dependencies. Okay, so I will stop here. I have now almost crossed the time, and I will be rejoining you on Friday, and continue from this point onward. I have to uh, um, practical session also. So let me see. Depending upon your choice, I will try to cover up the theory, because still we have to cover up decision tree, random forest, which also needs time, because I have to show you the computation of every parameter one by one and show how it works. Later on, I think if you know how it works, you can use any package, Python, R, etc., and do it yourself. It will not be difficult at all. So I have another session on uh, on 15th Thursday, 11:45 to 11 yeah 11:45 to 1:45 hours. So if you want, I can continue with this topic and try to finish after this decision tree. So I will take the same example of as shown here, and try to work on the same example in decision tree, so that you are able to make out what is the actual difference in which Bayesian classifier works and decision tree works on the same data. Okay. Obviously the two works using different basis and background, but it will be interesting to see how you compute probabilities here and how decision tree generates rules based on computing information gain ratio and entropy and so on. Okay, so I will leave up to you if you want me to continue this particular theoretical part. I think I may require another 1.5, but or if you want, I can pick up practical session and we can try to do something hands-on. So we'll stop here. And what is the general opinion? Do you want me to continue the theoretical part, or do you want me to explain working off with example on some technique? You can type. I mean, should I continue this? I need to cover decision tree random forest. So for working with examples, I would be covering only one topic on linear regression, not all, because I think we have other people who will be talking about other topics, who will be working or showing you the working of other algorithms. So we'll not be touching of all the parts, but only the one algorithm. So maybe I will focus only on linear regression. So you can let me know so that accordingly I will be prepared. So right now, these are application examples, and once it's clear, I mean, it will be, yeah. So I still have to start decision tree, which I have not done. Then we will get into detail of how it works and how you compute how you compute different trees, how you build nodes. I'm not able to get you. Should I continue or from this point in the next session, or should we take up linear regression trying to solve a problem? Can you please help me? Okay, okay, I will just you can inform your decision to Dr. Rupa madam, and
Yeah, sir, excuse me, sir. They have another next session is 2:30. Yeah.
not now. I'm asking about Thursday.
Next Thursday. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, sir. Yeah, say
Should I
that.
continue?
Yeah, Wednesday they have hands-on training. Actually, that is a Python only, no? Therefore,
Right. So,
there is no connectivity between this to that hands-on training. Whole day is a Python training, the basic thing. Yeah.
Thursday, I have another session.
Yes, I know, sir.
Yeah. So should I continue the remaining part, or should we go for hands-on?
But they asked to know hands-on that also, sir.
Okay.
This one is start from that day is 11:45, right, sir? Then you have to. They asked to. You have to explain these hands-on training, right? It's already in the first two session. First session, your one of colleague, Rahisha, she already started something, right? You have to continue. You do one thing, sir. Half an hour. What are the things you have to cover, and then you have to do for hands-on training also.
Okay.
And also I have to give a chance to what about participants. You please, anyone, you please, they're telling something in the chat box. Continue from this point only, somebody. Continue from this session. Thursday, continue from where you are left today, they're asking. And then such a clear explanations are best of the talk hard so far, and then they agree. 1 or 3 they given nothing. What you stop now today, they are the remaining part. They want to continue the Thursday. My another question is: suppose you continue that, is it possible to cover few things at least for hands-on training, sir?
It will be too much again because.
Yeah. What we are going to do, sir?
Okay, I will do something. Maybe I will try to cover up this in 1 hour, And
Okay, sir.
in that case, I have one request that if all of you agree, I will use the R software to demonstrate linear regression. Okay, and I will give you a task that you use the same data and
Okay.
do the same analysis in Python yourself. Given that
Yes.
you now have several sessions on Python already done, so I
Yeah.
think you will be very comfortable trying to convert my R explanation to your Python equivalent.
Okay. That means that day we are going to do in R, sir.
R software. So please install R and we will do hands-on there.
That R software also free software.
Free software. Yes, it's a free software.
Yeah. Yeah, just you install, just you go to the Google and then you install. Which version you want, sir? R software?
Any latest version you can download, either R desktop or R studio. Both are fine. Both are free and open source.
Yeah, please make a note for our friends, R desktop or R studio.
R
Ma'am,
studio.
please mute your microphone. Somebody they're disturbing. Anupama, always disturbing. Sir, please note this point what sir is told. If you want to cover what they not yet complete today, if you want to cover, so sir is going to do the hands-on training in using our software. At that time, we don't have a time to install. I'm requesting everyone along with the Python, you please install R Studio or R Desktop, any one of the software we get in the desktop. Correct, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, then we get in the Google. Most of them they're coming from a computer background. Compared to me, you know very well. And then you please be ready with our software on Thursday. Don't create a problem. You want to install means again, sir is not able to complete. If you want to complete, if you want to take a more knowledge, more experience from the sir means you must be installed the task software. Then only at time consumption is less. The service try to complete what they not yet complete today. They're going to extend another 1 hour, and then after that they're going to do the hands-on training in our software. Correct, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, everyone they're telling, oh, okay, sir, like that. Okay, sir.
Thank you.
But I'm requesting once again, everyone they has to install our software, but we are not informed earlier. Sir, just now only they informing. Therefore, you install. I think somebody they already have our software. That they're not required much time also to install, right, sir?
It's very easily downloadable, and within 2 to 3 minutes you can install that.
Yeah, okay, sir. Sir, now we are going to stop, sir. You?
Yeah, we are going to stop now.
Okay. Thank you very much for your wonder, sir. If you want to tell anything, please continue.
No, thank you. Thank you all of you for patiently listening to me. I know that almost more than 4 hours we have been here, but it's great to interact with you. I keep getting answers from you whenever I pose a question, so that helps me to know that many of you or all of you are listening to what I'm saying. So it's great to be here, and we'll meet on Thursday now at 11:40.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank
sir,
you.
for given wonderful talk in the second session also. Totally what you told, you have taken more than 4 hours. Yeah, we try to complete, but you are explained very detailed. Our friends also, our colleagues, means our participants is already put a message, lot of things is very nice, all the things. Then thank you very much for your cooperation, sir. And then we will meet on Thursday, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And then at the time, everyone they ready with our software also, sir.
Yeah.
What are things you are not yet covered, you please cover in the Thursday and then I do. Thank you very much, sir. I'm expecting same cooperation in further future also.
Yeah, sure.
Once again, thank you very much from our participant side also.
Thank you.
Anybody have to mute 1 minute, you please convey to sir also. It's possible to mute yourself. No need I'm not muted everyone. Anybody? Hello? They sending a message.
Ma'am, I have another meeting from 2 o'clock, so I will be logging
Oh,
out.
okay, sir. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Please, participant, please assemble again 2:30. You please take 35 minutes break and come back 2:30. Exactly 2:30, another resource person they're going to join. Thank you very much. You please come back 2:30.